everyone, and welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host, Lei Xing, and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners and viewers, welcome back. We ask that you help us get the word out about this podcast to others that you think may be interested in viewing and listening as well. My name is Tu Lee. I am the managing director at Sino Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull some of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.substack.com, which, of course, I encourage you all to do. A construction is done. Have a brand new deck. Lei, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. Good morning. This is your co-host, Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review. And this is episode 225. Dos cinco? Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yes.
Dos cinco. Who do you got in the World Series?
It's got to be the Dodgers.
All right, then you know who I'm always rooting for. I'm always rooting for the underdogs.
Okay.
Although it's going to be a monumental task. For those that don't know, we're talking about the baseball, also known as the Fall Classic here in the U.S. Yeah, it looks like a runaway for Dodgers, but who knows? I mean, like,
that's why they play the game, Lei.
You know, it's national pride, right? Because there's only one baseball team in Canada. So
yeah.
So it's like the whole country is like, I know some people, you know some people who are in Canada. I think their school even sends out messages to their students and parents about how to like work around the schedule or something. Like that's how crazy it gets. But back to China. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, so there's lots of things to talk about. We can just pick and choose. Since last week, I apologize. I had a school related event on last Friday that took the whole day, so we can do this. But we should be able to continue with this schedule.
Holy cow, Lei. Heavy hitting question right off the bat. We will circle back to this question.
Probably since somebody mentioned about this Volkswagen being done. I don't think they're done, but they're stopping production, apparently. And this is one of the biggest news the last couple of weeks since we last talked about.
One other thing, a media outlet reached out to me because Carlos Tavares is writing a burn book.
That was the other thing I was going to we can discuss about, because there's some juicy comments that he said in that interview with Lapointe about, first of all, about a Chinese automaker acquiring some of the brands from the French side or the European side.
Let's just talk about it. Did you interpret that as brands or like an entire company, like Stellantis or like Peugeot or Citroën?
Well, Stellantis is made up of, let's say, formerly FCA and PSA. Right? So
they have too many brands.
I think not all out of the question that something, if this were to be broken up, I think the process is this. First of all, it has to be broken up like he suggested. And then possibly PSA, a company like a PSA who still has a Dongfeng as a joint venture partner and a shareholder, it's very possible that an entire company, at least in some form, is owned by Chinese. But we say this with the backdrop of this Nexperia crisis, which is something, a company, European company, Dutch company, that is owned by a Chinese company. And they're running into issues. So we look at it from different perspectives of how this can be possible or not.
This points back to me a little bit like the ARM debacle years ago.
Yeah.
The semiconductor company, the British semiconductor company. But this is different reasons for happening. We can talk about it a little bit later in the show. The other thing I wanted to talk about with you, Lei,
But
is
the
that
answer is
China.
yes. I think it's entirely possible.
I think it would be a heavy lift.
Yeah.
If it's a brand, one or two brands, yeah, I think that could be possible. No, there's nothing to say that a Chinese company couldn't want to be a Volkswagen group with 10 or 12 brands under its, portfolio of companies. I don't see that being an issue, but to swallow whole a Renault or a Stellantis or a Volkswagen group, that's what I was a little bit. Is it referring to a single brand, or is it referring to like these big companies that have multi foreign country shareholders? That's what I mean. It'd be complicated because Stellantis is French, but there's a little bit of Italy, there's a little bit of all these other countries, Spain, and so it makes for a messy acquisition.
Yeah. And then we have the Stellantis lead motor. What happens to that if it gets broken up, right? There's all these kind of crazy scenarios.
Well, the other thing that Carlos had mentioned was the Chinese were going to demolish the European automakers, basically, right?
Yeah, I think he was upset about the European Union kind of the path that they're on now. He was kind of upset about it, and even with the tariffs, right?
Well, he can poo-poo all he wants because pre 21% acquisition of Leap Motor, he was also, we have to protect the European market. And post, I'll just say this. I sent a few pictures of the Paris Motor Show where Carlos was basically speaking at the Leap Motor press event.
Yeah. I mean, that was last year, right? That was last year.
Last year.
Before a couple of months before he got fired, right?
Got,
yeah.
So,
but yeah, that book in French? It doesn't appear to be available here. I mean, it'll be nice.
I'm not even sure it's out yet. I think they just released some chapters or some excerpts from the book.
Pilot in the Storm. That's what the book name is called. So I'll be happy. It'll be interesting to read it.
I'll give him my $25. That's fine. Or €22, 23, €25.
Yeah. And then I talked about the Nexperia. This is a whole new.
Let's back up.
Crisis.
Let's explain to people. So there's a semiconductor company called NXP Semiconductors. They're Dutch. Nexperia is a spin out of NXP, and Wingtech acquired Nexperia.
This was before the pandemic. I think this was 2019.
Yeah, this is not recent. And the Dutch government effectively said, you can't own Nexperia anymore because there is a substantial number of Dutch employees in a facility and a presence in Holland with Nexperia that is now Chinese owned. And so I think they did that at the behest of the United States government.
Well, because both Nexperia and a subsidiary were put on that entity list. So the whole reason behind this was because of the U.S. influence. And the most recent, the Nexperia China put out a statement, very provocative, very direct statement, saying whatever Nexperia headquarters has announced does not apply to what's happening in China, especially that recent
they said basically
executive move. So it's still fluid, but it's causing Volkswagen and some other potentially European automakers to shut down production next week.
So let's peel the layers of the onion back, give it a little history lesson. The United States often sanctions, puts Chinese companies on entity lists, but a lot of the time, they're toothless. So for instance, Huawei, they were put on an entity list, meaning that they couldn't buy certain technology from U.S. companies. But there are loopholes, all kinds of loopholes. So there was a good article The Wire China had written about the subsidiaries that these Chinese companies create in order to purchase commodities, components, continue to purchase these commodities and components that the parent company is not supposed to. Trump recently enacted, or the Trump administration enacted what's called the 50% rule. So if there's a subsidiary that's owned more than 50% by a Chinese entity, which there are hundreds and thousands, they're added to the entity list. So that's my guess about Trump trying to close these loopholes. So to continue on that Huawei example, Huawei used to always be a handset maker that would buy silicon from U.S. companies or that had U.S. IP. They were put on the entity list. So what did they do? They started buying through Honor, which is the other handset maker of a brand under the Huawei brand.
Yeah.
And Honor is not on the entity list. So they could continue to buy certain components and commodities. So when the United States, it seems more saber rattling on certain occasions than actually closing loopholes. But this 50% rule is really seems like it's trying to close those loopholes. And in response, a week later, I believe about a week later, the Chinese government dialed up restrictions on rare earth metals and on rare earth magnets. And so this is where we are today. And part of and the reason that Nexperia situation bubbled up is because, to your point, they were added to this entity list because they're a Dutch company that is owned by Chinese companies.
And this company, Nexperia, ships billions and billions of these little, what do you call them? Let's just call them chips for this.
Control units, connectors, whatever.
Electronics, for infotainment, for electronics control, significant. And now we're back to a chip crisis.
So let me give another quick, dirty explanation. There are analog chips, and then there are AI chips. And NVIDIA, AMD, they're more on the high end, high margin, lower volume that run the servers that train the algorithms. But then companies like NXP, Renesas, Texas Instruments, these are companies that supply the automotive sector with analog chips that go in almost every control unit. And these control units are then shipped to run braking systems, to run air conditioning systems. And so these are the types of things that if Nexperia is taken out of the system, there is no other alternative, really. There's no alternate source that can be immediately moved to in a lot of instances. So this is the bed that the rest of the world made, unfortunately.
It just shows how fragile the global auto industry can be and is, once again.
So as an American, I don't understand how we got ourselves into certain situations.
Well, the U.S. wants to have a say in everything, everywhere in the world.
Well, I look at it this way, Lei. I don't think that is any different than before, but now it's pretty open. It's in the open.
Yeah. And it looks like I was chatting with someone from Canada that Howard Lutnick does not want cars built in Canada. And interestingly enough, both GM and Ford has announced the earnings. And there's this Trump posted a Truth Social post saying that Mayor Barr and Jim Farley thanked him because they're taking a lesser effect from the tariffs. Thanks to Trump. It's very intertwined. We talked about the Carlos Tavares, Stellantis, Nexperia, the tariffs, the U.S. automakers. And they're actually both GM and China, believe it or not. I think GM is 10 consecutive quarters of profitability or growth in China. Ford, 9 consecutive profitable quarters, believe it or not, in China. Although they're not selling that well. So it's good and the bad, right?
So Stellantis is also kind of on Canada's crap list because of the Brampton, Ontario factory is now getting products moved back to the United States. And so for those of you that were diehard automotive fans, you have to learn to be a little bit more geopolitical now, unfortunately.
Yeah. And then I think we shall go back to China because we left China for a bit. Recently, I think you also mentioned in the newsletter, there's this big roadmap announced from the SAE China's annual Congress of what happens 15 years from now.
Let me stop you there, Lei, because I did want to talk to you about that. But I'm going to say this very, very plainly and very, very clearly. For those Westerners that are surprised, that were surprised of China's big moves, growth, whatever you want to call it, in the clean energy vehicle sector, in the battery sector, in the mining of minerals, the mining of rare earth metals, you have this roadmap. It's a 15-year roadmap. It has numbers. It has percentages. Don't tell me that you're surprised 5 to 7 years from now, once they start making progress towards those goals. Do not do that, because it is out in the open right now.
So China also this past week had the, the fourth plenum communique, which talks about the development for 15th 5-year plan, which means 2026 to 2030. And this roadmap from the SAE China Congress, first of all, it's not the first roadmap. It's what you alluded. Roadmap 3.0. So 1.0 was 2016.
But they don't come out every year.
No. So 2.0 was 2020. And now we have this 3.0, which supposedly goes to 2035, but they added another 5 years, just say what happens in 2040, at least the goal, at least the target numbers. Do you have those numbers? I'll let you shoot some out just to share. If not, I can share,
Hold on.
There's lots of numbers.
You share. Well, I think the important number was 80% of all vehicles in China by 2040 will be clean energy vehicles.
Yes, and the other interesting from the flipping to the other extent is by 2040, a third of the vehicles sold, passenger vehicles, will still have an engine. So these will include the regular hybrids, the PHEVs, and the EREVs. And by the way, XPeng is launching the X9 with the fuel tank.
And a 1,622 kilometer range.
Because they're going backwards. Kind of.
This X9, so for the Americans that are listening and watching, it has a 622 kilometer range, I want to say. I believe.
Well, I don't know the battery range. It's probably at least 500 because it's got a 63.3 kilowatt hour battery.
No, so I did the calculation. It has a 900-mile range.
900-mile range, a 60-liter tank.
Oh my god! And it's a 60 kilowatt hour battery or something. So this battery is bigger than most BYD entry level BEV battery packs.
Yeah.
Because most entry-level BYD battery packs are less than 60 kilowatt hours.
Yeah. And so they have this penetration target of the take rate among passenger vehicles of NEVs. So 2030 is 70%, 2035 is 80%, and 2040 is 85%. So that's the big numbers. And then they also gave out some other targets, not only on NEVs but on energy consumption. It's an interesting thing they set specifically for A-segment PVs, NEVs. By 2040, they want to reach 9.2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Currently on the market, a lot of the NEVs are probably around 15 kilowatt hours. I mean, XPeng says they can do 12. Mercedes, with the CLA that they're launching, is supposed to be below 12. So that gives you kind of a reference point. And then even on the hybridized, they expect by 2030, every vehicle that's sold in China, at least passenger vehicles, there will be no longer purely driven by ICE. So it's either some form of electrification by 2030. So full hybridization of PVs. And then even fuel cell EVs, by 2040, they want to achieve annual production of 1 million fuel cell vehicles. And then on the ICV side,
well, here's another important one. Lei. They will reach peak carbon emissions by 2028.
yeah, I mean, that's probably part of the 2030, 2060 China had already announced, right? That the dual carbon.
Didn't they also say something about intelligent driving?
That's where I was going. The intelligent driving want by 2035, 70% of vehicles with level 3 or level 4. And 2040, all ICVs will have level 4 capability. And
so let me throw a quick curveball, Lei, because GM had that tech day.
Right, GM Forward.
One of the things that they showed off was the early sneak peek anyways was the 2028 Escalade IQ that had level 3.
Eyes off. Basically eyes off.
Yeah, I think
they call it eyes off, hands off.
Right. Anecdotally, GM is talking out of both sides of its mouth because it's in the short term, it is reinvesting heavily in ICE. And then earnings, they killed it. Share price up 15%. The next day, they didn't have this event in Detroit. They had it in New York City. And this corresponds to Sterling Anderson, who is their chief product officer, recently hired chief product officer, writing an op-ed in Fortune magazine. Okay. And he was part of the 4 or 5 people sitting on stage at Tech Day. And so I was texting with a mutual friend of ours, and he was like, what do you make of this? Because Lin Hua Wu, who is the chief comms officer, is now, we talked about this a little bit last week, who is now the chief marketing officer for General Motors. I've looked at her LinkedIn. It doesn't seem to have much of a marketing budget. One of the things that concerns me with that. So if you think of Sterling Anderson, the op-ed on Fortune, the Tech Day, it's GM really, really trying to reposition itself as a tech-ish company.
And remember, they're doing what Volkswagen is doing. This central computing platform is agnostic. So it doesn't matter if it's ICE hybrids or what Volkswagen is doing, right? They're also using the CEA to apply to all Volkswagen brand ICE or NEV vehicles in China. So that's one thing. And then Sterling Anderson, he was with who? Aurora before, or some other?
He was with Tesla, and he's a co-founder of Aurora.
Right. So, I mean, these are the backgrounds. But
he's got the cred. He's got the cred.
But when I saw this, right, I mean, Rivian's already doing that, and I saw this. GM is, I mean, compared to the Chinese, what they're doing, GM is 5 years late, kind of. But at least they're on the right track. They're doing it.
But so you know this. I'm in Detroit. I'm in meetings every week with people, and I'm arguing with people. We're not, they're aware. They're not late. They're aware. You know why? I figured it out. I might have said this last week. If you don't see Chinese cars on your roads, you don't feel that urgency. Europe sees it. All these other countries in the rest of the world, many of them see it. So they see this quality level. They see and feel and touch how substantial and how much value these Chinese cars give them. Americans, they're like, man, I couldn't be happier. Yeah, and I'm exaggerating, but it is. You almost need that vehicle to be on the roads here to remind you we have a limited amount of time.
And hence we do have this window, thanks to the walls that have been put up. The 100% tariffs, the ICV ban. Who knows when that will continue to, but it's and at the same time, I think especially the EPA, there was a new proclamation, I guess it's called, that's helping the U.S. automakers, at least in North America. So they have this window. They had this extra time to push ahead, almost.
And I want to really emphasize that Stellantis and Volkswagen Group need to be looked at differently than the GM and the Fords and even the Renaults, because there aren't formal partnerships in play at GM and Ford with a Chinese partner. But so Stellantis and Volkswagen Group have cheat sheets. In Volkswagen Group's case, they have twice the amount of cheat sheet because they're also partnering with Rivian. So you can almost look at it like it's the best of both worlds for Volkswagen. Now it's a reconciling the size of my workforce. It's reconciling how much culture do we need to change at Volkswagen Group? How much faster can we go? Because assuming that XPeng technology, which I believe it is top notch, and assuming that Rivian technology is top notch, like competitive globally, then it's not about the technical part. It's about integrating these disparate companies, both startups, that one is struggling more than the other. XPeng seems to be on its way up. Rivian is still, I would say, they're flat, waiting for the R2. So now, and Bluma doesn't have an excuse because he's going to get Porsche pulled from him.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Bluma's.
Yeah, we can talk about that. So maybe we segue into that. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Escalade IQ with the LiDAR on top. That's interesting. Who could that be? We don't have exact, but if I remember correctly, I think it was Hesai who recently signed a major deal with the North American automaker. I could be wrong. I remember something that was announced. So can you have a Cadillac EV sold in the US with the Hesai LiDAR? Because Hesai is already on Europe on these robotaxis. These are all interesting look going forward to contemplate, to see. But Bluma, I mean, that was just a matter of time. So I think it's good. I think he can focus a little bit more on a group level. And then,
what do you think of the hire of Leiter?
I don't know this guy, but he did have Porsche experience. Just have a new blood. He can be considered an outsider or no, but it comes from these ultra luxury brands, right? Or sporty brands. So hopefully that works out. But
so yesterday, Lei, I'm in New Lab. You visited New Lab.
Yeah.
While you were in Detroit. I'm at a conference that is being run by this organization that's a joint partnership between MIT, one of their one of their organizations at MIT, and OP Mobility. Do you know who OP Mobility is? Like what their name was in the past? It's a French company. It's a tier 1.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, the lighting, was it?
Yes.
Plastic Omnium? Yeah.
Plastic Omnium.
Omnium, yeah.
So they changed their name to OP Mobility.
They supply Rivian headlights or something, or the front assembly, if I remember correctly.
Yes. So I'm at this event that's hosted. It's an all-day long conference. And the cool thing is it's actually being live streamed on LinkedIn. Like we're being live streamed. But so my friend, I don't know if you know him, but Jose Asumundi, who's the global head of auto research for JP Morgan, he flew in.
Okay.
Because he was a panelist. And then he was on a panel with the CEO of OP Mobility and the daughter of the owner and founder of OP Mobility.
Okay.
Jose tells me that OP Mobility is a really good tier 1. They have about 50% market share of fuel tanks in China.
Fuel tanks.
And
yeah,
so,
right.
So they do really well. But they are a lighting company as well. But yeah, there's some of these. You know who I also saw? Ex-GM now head of North America for OP Mobility, Marissa West.
Okay.
So that was kind of funny to see her, but like, because they're on my turf, right? Because I work there twice a week or whatever, 2-3 times a week. But we're having these conversations about mobility and disruption and stuff. And like, it's Yogi Berra said, it's like deja vu all over again, because we've been talking about this for years. Or, I've been writing about it for years in the newsletter, and we've been talking about it. So it's starting to trickle in. To your point, it's late, because as of 3 years ago, they didn't even acknowledge the Chinese, right? And not only are they acknowledging the vehicles, but they're acknowledging the importance of connectivity and the connected vehicle. And one of the panelists was Uber Freight sales director. And they started talking about how important autonomy will be for freight transportation. The CEO of OP Mobility, it's a French company, so you would assume, but the CEO is French, flew in from Paris. The daughter of the owner is French. And then there was Jose, who lives in London, but he's Spanish. And then the Uber Freight guy was an American guy. But, when the French are acknowledging and trying to build cred by talking about connected vehicles and stuff like that, it's like,
yeah.
But it's starting to
done that.
be socialized. It's starting to be socialized. And I was in a small private meeting with another set of people, and I said, if we're to compete, the government needs to create less friction, not more friction. And I maybe didn't state it as eloquently or as clearly as I could have, maybe, and I said, the OEMs still don't get it. And I got immediately pushed back, because there's a couple of OEM and tier 1 representatives in the meeting. I have a bone to pick. I would disagree with that. The leadership knows. And I looked at them and I said, because, I don't have an OEM as a client.
Here's where we should mention there's always we talk about China speed, but there will be drawbacks. And the two most recent examples, these are the elephants in the room. The Xiaomi accident, which still there's no response from Xiaomi as of today. Last night, this Mega got burned down. Luckily, the passengers got out.
Because there's a physical handle. There's a physical door.
In the attorney letter, the owner said they could not open the side gliding door, so he got out from the passenger side. So based on that attorney letter, but from the video that you can see this online, the right side gliding door actually opened later on, but it was already engulfed in flames. Right? We don't want to make any conclusions on what is the cause, but the way things transpire and get picked up and in China is fast. There's always distortions. I think that's the drawback of this China speak. I think it's things happen. It's just
well, it doesn't help that Xiaomi is not setting the record straight.
Maybe right. Maybe the investigation is taking longer. I don't know. Who knows? But
and
it's like, I think for Li Auto, it's definitely what you call when it rains it pours, right? Because they've been facing issues with their EREVs. And the i-series, i6 is supposed to be good, but the IA is not. And now they have this come out. And obviously, as a company, you have to do crisis PR. And in China, you know how...
Design-wise, the i8 is just... External design is not great, in my opinion.
So, I mean, these things, I think...
I will add this, Lei. The Xiaomi has layers of challenges because there was an intelligent driving flaw.
Well, there's also the guy who was drunk driving. I mean, these all the, what you can control, what you cannot control. But, these raises questions. People will, like you say, people will throw a bone or people will challenge, what is, right? We talk about it. There's good and the bad that we have to talk about,
Anything else you want to talk about?
No, the other thing interesting is the JD Car 001. It's an interesting, at least from a sales channel, the way how JD all of a sudden is come into play as a major player now, selling EVs in China.
Well, that's the same as Amazon.
Plus the CATL chocolate swap. This is
Yes.
one of the first, I guess not the first, but something you can privately own and purchase through JD. It takes 99 seconds officially to swap, and it's got a 500-kilometer range, which is quite high, quite long for this A0. The Ion UT Super is an A0 segment, so I think it's a hatchback, small hatchback with a 500 kilometer
almost like a fleet
range.
vehicle.
Yeah, and so they started this bidding process online ahead of the Double 11 holiday shopping day, and somebody bid 78 million RMB to get this 001. So I don't know if he's going to pay for it, but crazy things happen in China. Weird things happen in China for the good and the bad.
Well, and we're just rounding the corner to the end of the year, so we're going to continue to see some
Someone
crazy
tells
stuff.
me it could just be call it a setup, or this guy's not really going to pay 78 million, but who knows? $10 million.
One number this week that stood out to me was 1,122, as in 1,122 gigawatt hours. That's how much production of batteries has been built in China from January through September. And a Model 3 standard range is 60 kilowatt hours. That would build 1,122 gigawatt hours, would build almost 19 million Model 3s.
At the same time, right? CATL, I think they announced some numbers of their Q3 earnings, which is pretty good, and I think it was 180 gigawatt hours shipped. I gotta check what time frame that is, but it's some big numbers.
And it's only going to get bigger between October and December.
Well, this is the time where for Li Auto, for NIO, they're trying to produce all they can in these blockbuster models, right? I think NIO, they did 10,000 a week registration for the first time ever last week. Which means a 40,000 rate a month, which I think they will get there.
Because like the United States with the September 30th date, China is racing to December 31st because they're going to get rid of more subsidies.
Yeah, and hence, the Q3, I think there is a bit distorted Q3 earnings. They were good for, Tesla, GM, Ford, at least revenue-wise, right? The earnings, they have to take hits from these other factors. But yeah, I mean, this is crunch time for Q4. At the same time, they have the balance not pushing everything this year. Well, for NIO, their number one priority is profitability. So Li Bin sent an internal letter, and number one, everybody needs to work toward the goal of profitability by the end of Q4. So for different companies are different, but come next year, you get half less from the purchase tax exemptions. So, right, you want to get those in.
So I anticipate Tesla in North America having a pretty substantial pullback starting in October, November, December, which means that they'll likely incentivize the North American quote unquote US buyer somehow, some way. Whether that's a discount on FSD, whether that's free charging, I'm not sure yet. But I think that if they see a substantial decline in sales in the first couple of weeks of October, they'll be prepared to incentivize somehow, some way. And GM will likely see a little bit of a funk, but I think they're really, really high on a launch of the Bolt for $29,000. And then obviously the Slate vehicle that's supposed to be coming. My guess is that R2, Gravity, Baby Gravity don't end up coming until Q4 at best, and Slate in and around that time frame as well. So 2026 should be a weird year for clean energy vehicles in North America as we wait for the more affordable vehicles to come, because I don't I can't think of too many others that are going to be in the 30s and low 40s in North America until at least late next year.
Well, the recent latest number from KBB was that in September, ATP crossed $50,000 for the first time in history. $50,000.
So, as some of you know, I also co-host a show with Joe White. He said that when he had made that same comment about it crossing 50,000, and now cars are a product for the rich. And if you're not rich, you can just buy a used car. And there is a market of 10, 20 million customers that, and he said that the $100,000 car is not a Mercedes or a BMW, it's an Escalade. So that's the most popular car. Always something to talk about, man. Always something to talk about.
And then just a couple other things. I think Leapmotor, they launched this D19 large 3-row 6-seater with the battery electric range of 500 kilometers. There's this pyramid. I don't know if you saw that, of all the EREVs in China ranking their battery electric range. So D19 is currently at the very top with 500. And I'm sure...
I haven't seen that.
I'll try to send it to you. And then I'm sure somebody will trump it.
Oh, without question.
And then XPeng, congrats to moving on this new nice-looking spaceship headquarters.
We'll have to go check it out.
Yeah, it looks amazing. They're launching, like we said, X9 with a 60-liter fuel tank. I have to wrap my head around it.
And a 63 kilowatt-hour battery, which gets a 900-mile range.
Yeah, but
bit of overkill. But hey, one of the things that I did in my newsletter this week, Lei, and you might have saw this because it's my newsletter and I can do whatever I want. I posted a little short video of the Detroit Lions Monday Night Football. So I took my son to watch that game. So that was cool. We won 24-9. And then next week is the Reuters Automotive Conference here in Detroit. So for those that plan to attend, I'll be there. Joe White and I are co-hosting a panel discussion on day one at around 4:30. I'll send you pics and I'll say hi to some people. I'm sure there's going to be people coming into town that you know as well. I'll be doing that all next week. And so let's get to questions.
Right.
Jeffrey, those crazy Dutch, the brands of Stellantis. Now that's what we call a cash burn. Yikes. SSJJ005. Is it true that Li Auto stopped announcing the weekly registration numbers?
So this past week, I have not seen those numbers. So maybe it is. But as you know, they've been going down. And I know that the i8 in September, the numbers were not good.
They're just trying to stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey again, better send King Trump and some tulips and wooden shoes.
You know, last weekend we had this huge rally across the U.S. and even here in Amherst, it was this huge rally, of No Kings rally. So
people are freaking out because he demolished a part of the White House.
Yeah.
This is a fine mess of all messes. Ironic that the Chinese are not blamed on this one.
Excuse me.
So I wrote a question, bless you, a couple questions. Let's see if they're answers. So I wrote a question to the audience. What do they think about Canada? Will they eliminate the Chinese tariffs on passenger vehicles? Jeffrey writes, Mark Carney, let the Chinese EVs into Canada, remove the tariffs.
Well, there was this recent letter that was sent by the Chinese ambassador to Canada, right? Asking to remove this in return for something I forget, but
agricultural. I think Canada products.
But then remember, in the back, you have this influence from Howard Lutnick from the U.S. So it's a delicate matter.
Dear Jigo FFMM7496 writes, what is Canada protecting? Well, they were protecting the U.S. automakers building in Canada, but now they don't have much to protect because most of that, I won't say most, that's probably not an accurate statement. A lot of that production is moving back to the United States. Jeffrey writes, I think they might achieve that target sooner. And I think he's talking about the 80% by 2040 of clean energy vehicle take rate.
This year we're probably going to get to 50% when the year ends. So let's say 33, 34 million, 16 million out of those, roughly 50%, including export, obviously. But we're right there, 50%. But obviously, it's not going to be it's going to be a long tail, right? It's not going to be continuing growing as fast as the last few years.
Malcolm Bennett 355 writes, I too wonder when Chinese EVs will be available in Canada. By the way, love the Ducati shirt. Thanks, man.
Deuce.
So some of my friends,
I love the Ducati in the new Tron Ares movie. I saw with
Is
my
that
daughter.
a Ducati? Have you watched that movie?
There's at the very. Well, I don't want to do the spoiler, but at the very end there was this classic Ducati at the very end of the movie. So yeah,
need to watch that. Was it?
This movie apparently flopped, but they did have this Optimus trying to fight Jared Leto at the premiere. So,
let me see here.
Speaking of Tesla, I heard that Giga Shanghai is crazily ramping up because the demand for the
Long
Y and the YL. So it's also because of the Q4, the seasonality that we talked about.
Well, and they're probably trying to export as many as they can too. Carney needs to make the move. Trump is distracted by his ballroom fiasco. Perfect time to move on it. 05 writes, Lee MPV was on fire. We talked about that a little bit late. Jeff also writes,
figuratively and literally, sad to say, but
most of these people are too lazy to get on a plane and see it for themselves. And I wrote another question. When do you believe Chinese vehicles will be seen on American roads? Jeffrey writes, I feel once Carney tries to make a deal, Trump will just ahead of him, but acknowledgement is always too late with the automotive arena. I bet you did. Keep fighting. So I think he's talking about me in my meetings talking. Only getting worse for Li Auto. WeChat was likely on fire too. I think he's talking about social media on WeChat.
Yes.
SSJJ writes, Li Auto fire got bad really fast, like in 10 seconds. Lucky there were no passengers in the third row because it would have been too late.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think these things, I mean, we talked about Xiaomi, we talked about Li Auto. It could happen to anybody.
It's inevitable. I'm actually really surprised. And maybe it's because of LFP. Well, let's assume one thing. I'm assuming that the quality level of the packs and the durability is a big reason why we're not seeing more fires.
Well, at the same time, all of these Chinese companies, when they launch these products, first of all, they talk about safety. The Zeekr 9X. And all of them are saying we've met this national standard. There's a requirement on the battery pack, not catching fire all of these things within, 2 hours. And when something like this happens, then you question.
Well, and there are consequences. You saw Xiaomi, you're seeing Li Auto right now with the MPV. So there are real consequences for any vehicles that are perceived to be unsafe. Mike, the car geek, writes, MIIT has become the leader in rules making globally. The door handles in the next vehicle you buy in the US will probably be influenced by the rules in China.
That's a good point. What's happening in China, whether it's the innovations or the tech coming out, or whether it's these controversies, is a good reference for the rest of the world. What to do and what not to do.
And then Jeffrey writes, likely Mike, very true. China's speed is quite powered. Go Neo. SSJJ005, Lei, Neo had it over a 10,000 weekly number in September as well. So it was not the first time this right. Mike the Car Geek, Ontario's auto industry will soon be gone unless they reach an agreement with the U.S. or get a Chinese automaker to come in. Well, I think they're trying to do both.
Interesting, yeah.
So
for Friday, I'm good.
I'm good. So okay. The conference is Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay. All right, looking forward to hear some chatter out of that conference, and then see what happens.
Everyone,
we can talk about it. Yeah.
Have a good weekend. Thanks for joining us. Oh, it's Michigan State weekend, so I'm going to go to East Lansing and watch the Spartans probably get crushed.
Yeah. Nice.
Anyways, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We will talk with you all next week.
Bye-bye. 再见.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Lee, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at Lei Xing 77. That's LEIXING 77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.